Hello, how's everyone doing? Hope everyone is well. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of a preview for the Leverkusen and Werder Bremen game. Now Werder Bremen are at home to Leverkusen, however both teams go into the game with Leverkusen being 5th and Werder Bremen being 17th. So Leverkusen really are expected to win the game, and Werder Bremen do have the worst home record in the Bundesliga so far this season. Although, because of the way the games are being played with no crowd, it's debatable to whether the home field advantage actually makes any difference anymore. We saw at the weekend Hertha Berlin swept aside Hoffenheim 3-0 away from home, so that could be an early sign that really home form doesn't really matter. But anyway, let's get into the picks and have a look at the DraftKings and see who might be good value for money. So we have the slate in front of us here. We're going to be taking a look at a few of the players. First things first, this, as we can see, Kevin Volland here. It's a shame he's not playing. With the highest salary, he's actually out at the minute. So he's not really one of those players that we're really going to be taking into the consideration. If we have a look at this slate, it's interesting because normally we've got a couple of players who are sort of up at the 12,000 mark, and then a couple of players who are maybe down at the lesser premium 9,000. With this one, it sort of seems that we gradually go down. So there's a lot of players to choose from. If we look at the first two, we look at Leon Bailey and Bellarabi, two very good players. What we find with these guys is that, say with Bailey, is that when they do play, they knock up incredible scores, as we can see here, the 18 and the 13.4. But then we take a look at their minutes played, and they're not really seeing very many minutes. I had a look at Bailey before, and he's only clocked 190 minutes the whole season. So he's one that, if he does start, definitely one to look out for, because we can see here, even if he plays 60 minutes, he brings in an absolutely incredible scores. But it's a hard one because they do get very few minutes. And with Bellarabi as well, we see the same sort of thing happening. He's only clocked in sort of 390 minutes so far this season. But when they do play, they definitely clock up very good scores. So if one of them starts, then it's definitely going to be hard to leave them out, I'd say. Now, Diaby looks like quite a good player. He can get some decent contributions, and when he does play, he looks like he's going to score as well. You see here that he's got a pretty decent floor when he does actually play, and definitely one that I'm considering putting into my team because he's a bit cheaper than Bellarabi and Leon Bailey, and he does look more likely to play a full 90 minutes. Now, Kai Havertz, one of the absolute wonder kids coming out of the Bundesliga so far. He, for me, is just a staple in the team. For 9.8k, I'm surprised he's not sort of up there with Leon Bailey and Bellarabi in the price. He, in some sort of predicting lineups that I've been looking at, he's looking at playing at as the top striker. Normally we've seen him play in sort of that number 10 role, sitting behind players like Diaby. But definitely a very solid pick, and I'd be surprised not to see him in a lot of teams. I guess the debate would be whether you captain him, and I mean, if he pops up with an assist or a goal, it'll be very hard for people to catch up with players who do have him captained. So I'm going to group these next two players together, Demirbay and Amiri. So these are the two guys who sort of you've seen mainly on the set pieces for Leverkusen. If one of them plays, then the other one will get all the set pieces, and sort of vice versa. It'll be interesting to see though if both of them do play, then if they split the set piece duties, it will sort of end up being worse for the both of them. We sort of see here the game logs, like the main points these guys can get really great points when they're on the set pieces, like 11 crosses here, 12 crosses here. We see sort of a 14 and a 22 and a 0.5, and then the same with Amiri. It's like when he gets the set pieces, he's going to be clocking you some pretty decent scores. But yeah, if one of them does play and the other one doesn't play, then I think we definitely, it's a good shout for having one of those in. Now we actually get to the first Werder Bremen player on the slate, someone who's sort of said to be too good for the team is Rashica. He's popped up with some very, very good scores in the past. And it's an interesting one because you're playing quite a premium here for a player who's may not be involved so much, because Leverkusen do like a sort of they like their passing play. They play the ball around a lot. But I guess the telltale sign for that would be against Bayern Munich, who arguably are even better at possession than Leverkusen. And against Bayern Munich, he did score, which does help that 18.8. But the fact that he's bringing in these kind of scores with a very nice floor, it'll be hard not to have him in. I feel like people who don't have him in could be punished, and he's a pretty decent pretty decent price for someone who is also going to be on the set pieces, or at least get his fair share of set pieces. Moving down a little bit, this guy Alario, sorry if I butchered that. He's another 4 for Leverkusen. It's sort of, when making this Leverkusen team, you're really just going to have to rely on when the lineups come out, because if this guy does play, then likely Diaby probably won't play. So you're really going to be sort of picking between the two. One thing I will say about this guy is, if we take a look at his game log, if he doesn't score, then really his base stats are pretty bad. We see him here like clocking up at 3.9. He doesn't really get many minutes in these games off the bench. He's obviously done well there, but yeah, full 90 minutes with a 1.2. So you're really relying on this guy to get a goal, to get sort of anywhere around 10 points. Well, maybe some of the other guys like Bailey and Bellarabi, even Diaby, you'll get sort of a 10 points, maybe without them even having to score a goal. Moving down a little bit, Bittencourt is the next Werder Bremen player we really see. He gets his fair share of set pieces as well. He looks like a pretty solid player. Maybe a little bit on the expensive side for someone who's really not going to be seeing much of the ball. We've got Borussia Dortmund here, who he's had a good game against. Leipzig is an interesting one, because Leipzig are a very good counter-attacking team, which makes me think that in this game, Werder Bremen maybe had a bit more possession than they'll get in this game, which is maybe why you're seeing a bit of a higher score of the sort of 6.9. But overall, it seems as though he's got a decent floor, so one to look out for. Although the floor sort of, we're looking at around 1 point per million, which is okay, but not the greatest. Now as we go down, Lars Bender for me is just completely overpriced. They're going to be defending a lot. Leverkusen, aren't really going to be defending, and the way that they play, the fullbacks don't really bomb forward very much. So really, without Werder Bremen getting on the ball, we're not going to see any sort of tackles. You maybe see one or two crosses from Bender, but we're likely to see a sort of 5 points getting clocked up from him. Another player definitely to look out for is Hirodaki at this sort of 7,000 mark. It's an awkward range. If he was a bit cheaper, maybe 6,000, I feel like I definitely want to put him in, because if we take a look at his stats, they do tend to keep quite a few clean sheets, and even when we sort of see him just picking up a win, we're seeing him pick up maybe 2 or 3 saves a game, which means he'll probably end up around the sort of 10 point mark for this game, which is very nice. But it'll be very hard to get him in with all of these sort of premium assets coming in at around the same price. It's very hard to get a player like Hirodaki, and when you've got a player who's a few thousand more, like a Rashika or a Demaby, who really can sort of, if they get a goal, just push you well up the ranks. So we scroll down a bit further. This guy Palacios is one that I'm looking at in terms of a sort of filler. If he does start, we don't really have too much information on him, but from what we see here is that if he does get a full 90 minutes, he's getting a 14.6 without any sort of goal contribution. Against Leipzig, he only played the 60 minutes and got a 6.6. So he's a player that I'm definitely considering if he does get the start. As we scroll down a bit further, we're sort of getting into those sort of filler players. We got Jonathan Tah here, a regular for Leverkusen at 4.4. I'd be more inclined actually if we scroll a bit further to place Sven Bender. He does have the questionable mark next to his name, so it'll be interesting to see whether he does start. And if he does start, I'd say that's a definite pick over Jonathan Tah. But really, we're just looking at filler players here who, like, we're looking at Eggestein, Selke. These players are all really only going to get you the 3 or 4 points for a price of around 4,500. Most of these guys are coming in at. It's not really worth it. If you're gonna sort of have a filler player, you may as well scroll down and get the sort of on the cheaper end, because realistically these guys will get you sort of 3 or 4 points as well. I mean, we do tend to see sometimes that sort of one of these guys, like the Jonathan Tars, will sort of come in with maybe a 7 or 8 point game, which can really like propel you up a leaderboard. But most of the time, we're going to see these guys filling in with sort of a 3 or 4 points. I mean, we can have a look at the game log of Jonathan Tah here, and we do see that we see an 8.4 here. That's what I was talking about, is that sort of the on the off game, they can sort of come in with quite a few tackles and interceptions and have a good game overall. We sort of see here that he's mainly got his points there from the 146 accurate passes, and that's a big thing with the defenders as well. If they come in with a clean sheet, that 3-point boost can really, really up their score, which is mainly what we see here. So if you do predict Leverkusen to get a clean sheet, maybe one of the defenders could be a decent shout. Maybe one of the cheaper guys we see down here, like Tapsoba. If this guy sort of comes in with full 90 minutes as we're seeing, then you could definitely be a pick, because we sort of, if we get sort of 4 points and then a clean sheet, we're looking at 7 points, which for 3,400 is just under 2 points per million, which is a pretty good value, I'd say. Down in this range, most of the players we're looking at sort of dud fillers, players that you're just going to sort of stick in and really just kind of hope that they come in with quite a few tackles. A player like Eggestein, I mean, we're not expecting a clean sheet from this guy, so realistically you're looking at sort of like a 3 or 4 points on average. That'll tend to be what he gets. A player at this bracket who surprisingly so is down there is Nuri Sahin. Now this guy, definitely I'm thinking about maybe captaining this guy, because for 3.6k and a potential, if he starts, at being on set pieces, he could rack you up sort of 6 or 7 points easily for 3.6k. The fact that Leverkusen are going to see a lot of possession as well, meaning Sahin plays in a sort of defensive midfielder role, means that he could potentially get a lot of interceptions, as we see here, 6 interceptions, and he could get quite a few tackles won and maybe a few fouls drawn. We do sort of see the likelihood of maybe a yellow card being picked up. If we have a look at his yellow card stats here, where are they? Yellow card here, so we've got 1 yellow card, and we've got a few yellow cards, probably more than the average player being picked up, and that could easily get you on -2 points, which you would need a few crosses, some interceptions won to recover from that. But for 3.6k and the likelihood, I mean, he's got an FPPG of 9.6, which for 3.6k you don't really see anything like. I mean, the closest we see is Eggestein here for 6.6, but Nuri Sahin is definitely a player that we should be looking at. And I mean, if we just have a look here, let's do maybe a few combinations. So if we do put Sahin as captain, oh sorry, that was Ozil. We're gonna move over to the captain slot here. He's only 5.4k, and really what that allows you to do is you can put in Havertz there, you could put in Rashika, get in Demirbay there, and you're left with quite a lot of money to go. You could even put in a player like Bailey if he starts, or a player like, Diaby, who's probably more likely to start and get for more minutes. And then you'd be looking at a guy that I said before, like Palacios, and to me that looks like quite a nice all-rounded team. You're looking at Havertz, Rashika, Demirbay and Diaby really coming in with the double figure points, and hopefully Nuri Sahin, if he gets the set piece duties, then he could get you maybe a 10 points as captain, and all these guys sort of coming in, you'd hope that these guys would sort of rock up 10 points each, and then that the combination of being able to have all these players would sort of take you above having a player like Havertz or Dimby as captain. I think I'll put a few in, so this will be one of them with sort of the Sahin captain, and then we'll probably be looking at either Demreby or a Havertz captain, because they're both the same. I see Havertz doing something in this game, so I see him scoring. So let's put that on the 1.5 times and get Havertz in there. It's hard not to have Rashica in there, because he definitely could be punished, but because of the way Leverkusen are going to play with the possession, it is hard to see that he'll get much of the ball. So I feel like obviously these guys are already 200 apart, so we'll probably lob Demreby in there. I'd quite like to have Herodaki in there, because if he picks up a couple of saves and a clean sheet and a win, then we're seeing a sort of 15 to 16 points, which is, as we said before, as I say now, anyone who's getting sort of 2 points per million, I'd say is pretty good value for money. Now we're looking at Bayer and Bellarabi. These are two guys who really we'll be looking at if they do start. It will make the job easier of crafting a team, I'd say, if they didn't start, because all the value players below that are a bit cheaper, like your Havertz and your Demreby. I'd be looking at maybe putting a Bittencourt in for Werder Bremen. We'll have to see if Sahin starts, but obviously Sahin's got to go in there as well. Then one player I didn't actually mention before, who's a little bit higher up, is Wendell. Now we look up on his stats, and it sort of does show he gets a few crosses in now and again, and some tackles won and interceptions. We're likely not really to see too many of these in this game because of the possession-based game we're going to see. We're not going to see them bombing up too much, but with the possession, we may see a player like Wendell who does like to get a little bit more forward than maybe Sven Bender, because he's a bit more attacking. And if we're likely to see a clean sheet as well, if we're looking at, because the way I tend to like to make my slates is maybe have one team that's sort of more towards a clean sheet side, because if we do see a clean sheet being had, if we have the goalkeeper in there with a couple of defenders, when the game ends, you're going to see your score absolutely propel up to maybe an extra 16 odd, with maybe an extra 16 odd points coming at the end. So maybe we can lob a Jonathan Tah in there, but with a player like Tapsoba being in there, and we have 8.7k left over, which makes me kind of tempted to lob in Rashica in this team instead of, but then you're looking at the price. See, that's the thing with such awkward pricing. Rashica's one that would be nice to have, because if he gets the shots on target, he'll be sort of bouncing off the points with Herodaki. But that's going to be a hard one to put in there, along with Wendell as well, who's just a little bit more expensive. I mean, we could go for Jonathan Tah and Tapsoba. I think Tapsoba is a good one to have in there. I mean, we could even look at Kai. If that gives us some money, we could look at having Demreby as the captain, and then Kai Havertz coming in second there. That gives us 6,000. That gives us plenty of money, hopefully. Oh, we're just off Wendell there. But yeah, you kind of get the point. This is the rough team that we'll be looking at creating, maybe a defensive team, and we'll be looking at having a strong Leverkusen attack. Maybe a team without Rashica as well, because you never know. You don't want to sort of put loads of the same players in all of the same teams, because if Rashica goes and has a dud game, which is unlikely, but if he pulls out a 5.5, then you've almost got half a point there per million, which is not really worth the money. So maybe think about not having Rashica in a few of the teams. I'll probably be putting in maybe about 3 or 4 teams into this game. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Good luck to everyone putting their teams into this game, and we'll be reviewing how it goes afterwards. Good luck.